Hi, this is Vaughan again in Nova Scotia. I think this is number 5 in this video set on how to make these two large urns. This thing has been drying out for about 3 hours just sitting like this, and now I have to put the handles on. Pulling handles is shown in another video, so I'm not going to pull them in front of you, but I've got a couple of large handles. Very large handles, because this is a very large piece. And I'm timing this. I'm timing it so that the clay is still soft here. It's firm around here, and it's a little firm, too firm, just in this area where the handle's going to go. So I have to wet where I'm going to be putting this, and I don't want to wet too much, obviously, and because it'll just push right through the piece if I get this too soft. It's also important, we can talk about, you can see the one behind me, I've put the handle on. There's a sort of strength when you put a handle on that the piece gives. So when you position your handles, you need to look at it and feel, that it doesn't look awkward or cumbersome when you're applying that handle and you've got it in position. These two, the thickest element of the piece, it seems like the strongest part with the thickness at the rim here is up here, and I don't join it right at the top, I just take it down, which is why I do this double little rim area so that I can start the handle so the line of the pot follows the handle out. So that's an important aesthetic that you don't have to follow because anything goes anytime anymore. But basically, for a more traditional looking piece, it's nice if you have those lines that you can follow, and the piece has this kind of feeling of symmetry, and just feels good. And that's an aesthetic, so you can choose and do whatever you want to do basically, but I like this kind of feeling of line that follows the piece. So when the handle comes out, I also like to find the point where the pot is the widest and come back down to that point there, and that line just continues that feeling all the way to the bottom of the pot. So the handle hole that is created comes in and down, and then when I trim this, it will follow that contour all the way in. So the handle feels like it's just meant to be there basically. So what I'm doing is this area up here, which is still fairly soft, I'm just wetting a little bit, and then I know that I've just talked about it, that area on this piece is about here on this pot, so I'm going to wet that area down there, and a much larger area that I know the handle is going to be applied on, because I like to smudge my handles out. And I'm just feeling the dryness of the pot. If you feel like you're touching the pot and you leave sticky imprints in the clay, you know the pot is actually okay to apply a handle. If it's actually too dry to leave any stickiness, you need to wet it down a little bit. And a lot of times you can even lightly score a piece. But if you're applying the handle just at the right point, you don't need to do that. But if you're worried about it, always get the scoring tool. This has a serrated edge, so it means that you can scratch a large area fast. Now, you have to make a mark on your top of your piece where that handle is going to go. I'm making 2 marks, and then turn it around, and you can use a ruler for this point if you want to, but my eye is pretty good, so I draw a line across there, make 2 marks again to correspond with those 2, and then I know that I'm going to be applying the handle in this general area here. I've noticed over the years that my one eye is maybe a little stronger than the other. Because when I apply handles, I think perfect. And then when I look at them later, I think, it was slightly off a little bit. And I think that's just because maybe I have one eye that's a little stronger than another. And I just use drugstore glasses. I don't have a prescription. These are just general purpose readers. But they're good enough for most everything. All right, so let's take a look around. That's the wet area. And there's the wet area here. So I'm going to hold the paintbrush to the middle of that, and hopefully my hand doesn't wobble up and down. And that's where I'm going to be wetting here. And you can quickly scratch. Not too deeply. The pot is not very thick. Remember, the pot that I created, this whole big piece, was only 7 pounds of clay. The bottom was 25 pounds of clay. So from about this part up was only 7 pounds of clay. So the clay wall is not thick in that area there. So scratching a much larger area than I think I'm going to need. Then go back around to the other side. It's getting tacky now. So just scratching it down. Probably the inside of this piece is softer still than the outside because I've been using that paint stripping heat gun that I use. I use it instead of a blowtorch, if you haven't heard me say before, because I don't like the oil residue on the blowtorches. I use a lot of slips and underglazes, and this thing's going to be completely sprayed black eventually. And then I'm going to sgraffito carving it out. My arm is going to be tired after spending 3 days probably carving each one of these. Okay, that looks like it's fairly tacky and sticky now. What about this side? Yeah, I think that is too. All right, let's give it a little bit more water just on the top up there, where we think that's going to be. Oops. A little bit up there, because it'll take me a minute to get these ready. All right. Now I'm going to flatten the area where I pull these handles and I snap them off. My fingers thin the clay a little bit at that area. So I'm just tacking it, thickening it at the joint area. And the clay is really soft, as you can see. Take a look at what you've got, where it's going to go. And apply it to, so the bottom of the piece is at that line, making sure that I'm right in the middle of that bottom joint area too. The clay is soft up here, remember, so I can easily bend this if I'm not careful. I tapped the board down to level it before I did this. So the top is fairly level now. Now take that down. I'm going to pull up just a touch so we get a little lift with the handle too. Yeah, it's pushing in, so I know it's thin in that area down there. Take a look at it. It's good to have the camera because I can see it from there. Okay, so that looks good. Make sure it's straight. My one eye is, I've often done this and they go off at an angle, so I really like to double check. Measure twice and cut once. Now pull that part up, over. I'm going to stick my hand inside now. And I'm using my thumb to slowly push, trying to make it as even as possible. I made sure I didn't trap any air in between those two pieces of clay. And then, like I said, I like to smudge my piece. It's like 3 movements down on either side. And if the clay was really soft on a smaller piece, you could just go for it and do it in one big swoop. making sure I got it really joined. And then the top part was softer than the bottom part, so I didn't score it up here. I'm just pushing that clay from under the side of the handle into the pot. The handle, I like it to feel like it's just growing, like a branch of a tree coming out of a trunk. It's just grown out there, so it looks like it's always meant to be there. Now it's awkward here. I would normally turn it around so you can see, but actually I probably should, but I want to keep the handle so you can see the curve. Okay, I've got more to do, but let's get the other one on. Now I'm going to check to make sure this is still tacky. Yep, still sticky. Okay, you just flatten. Get a good large area that you can adhere to the pot. The bigger the surface area that's going to stick to the pot, the better the handle will be and more durable. Now here's the trick. You got to get this exactly opposite. And remember, I want the bottom of my handle to be at the bottom where that double rim is. I think that's about right. But I do know that my one eye is a bit stronger than the other, I think, because I've often done this and then when I finish it and stand back, it was definitely not right. Okay, so that's actually sticking to the top. Now I'm going to tack the part down here. Whoop. Lift it, remember, and tack. And I need to score a little bit over because I think my scoring was not accurate enough. When I measured before, I was too far to the left, so I'm just going to take that and score here a bit. The piece is very thin in that middle area, so it doesn't take a lot of water, and you certainly don't want to make it too, too soft in that area. All right, so let's lift again. And just tack it a little bit. I don't want to press too hard because I want to turn this around a bit. Not even going to chop that bottom part off until I've had a good look. You can see better than me. Actually, that is pretty good. All right. I pulled the handles so they were the same size. Turn it over. Got my hand opposite that inside part, and then once again you're pressing up and down. Now it's a bit more secure, so let's have a look. Oh yeah, that's good. Actually, I think this one is a bit lower down than the other one. So what I can do is just join it a little higher up. I don't need to take it apart, I'm just going to press the handle in a little higher up. Out of your way. This handle's a little softer than the other one too. The other one's strength. That's what That's what these little pieces of clay are for over here, to stick between the handle to pull it in a little bit. So I'll have to do the same to that one. And I like to make sure my handles are never going to fall off. So what I always do is get a little piece of clay and wedge shape it a touch, just into a little wedge. Stick it down in there. And use the back of the paintbrush to push that down into the join area to make sure that fills in that little crack. Now you can rely on glaze just naturally falling down into that crevice, and that will give it a little bit of strength, but I like to get that piece of clay in there. And then join it, push your clay in, so basically just pushing the clay from underside of the handle into that join area. It's still very roughly joined. The handle's got lots of fingerprints all over it. Take another look. It's perfect at the moment, I can see. Now, what I was saying there, when a handle it doesn't have enough strength in the middle, you can take it, it's very tacky, so I can just lightly press a coil in there and it'll hold it in. And I'll take this off, obviously. There you go. For goodness sake. Oh, look, this one I didn't need to do that much at all, actually, so but I still have to put that little wedge of clay right into that section down there. Handles, I always say when I'm joining a handle on a coffee cup, it takes me as long to put the handle on a coffee cup as it does to make the coffee cup. You're really looking at it, if you're a fast thrower like me, I can make a mug in a couple of minutes. And then of course there's lots more to do after, but the throwing part is quick and the handle takes about the same amount of time. Okay, see, this handle was a lot firmer. I've got to clean that up a little bit, but that shape I think is holding its own. Yep, it is. I've got some shaping to do. Basically, now the last thing is I take 2 pieces of clay, make them into a ball, okay, they start like that, 2 balls of clay, then I cone it just a little bit so it's more of a little shape that's narrow at one end, and then I just pinch a little bit in the other end so it's rounded off a little bit. This handle's very soft. I place that right on the top of the join area, move it around so it's actually sticking really well, then press it down. Now you've got to be careful here because the pot is soft. I'm supporting with my fingers underneath. And now I'm just rounding off this little piece into a extra lump of clay that gives that handle a bit more strength, and I'm using my fingers to work on it. So I've got all the weight going onto my fingers underneath and not onto the pot. It's like a place where your thumb would go. I do it on all my coffee mugs. I guess you'd say it's like a trademark that I've done ever since I was a potter. So then it's kind of flattened out now. I'm pushing it into the join area by doing that a little bit. Making it smooth so it looks like it's flowing into the other one. And then you get some water and just sort of smooth it off. This will have a lot of shaping to do yet. That was the one. That's come apart again, so I'm going to have to, maybe I could use a bit of water on that, it'll probably help. But it'll, as the clay dries, I'm going to be able to get that to work a little better. I always come back to pieces about once every half an hour when they're drying, just to make sure that they are not out of shape. It's easy to correct something when the clay is still soft. So put your fingers, I'm pressing down with my finger on the top, but I'm pushing up from underneath so the handle doesn't get bent out of shape too much. It's bound to be a little something going on there. And then with my top finger, try not to slip off the side of the lump of clay either. You can use stamps. When this is a bit firmer, I'll probably put a stamp of some sort onto this coil, give it a little texture. There you go. And at this point, it's just about working on this handle to make it as neat as you can, supporting it so it doesn't come loose at any time in the future, or in the firing specifically. That's when you've got to worry about all the stress of everything. Take a look, that one's holding its shape now, and you've got to just kind of do this. Work on it to kind of get rid of any irregularities, any kind of lump. You can smush, just brush it away. I want that line from the handle to come in and go around and come back out on the other side. So I'm working on it to kind of, this one's a bit lower down. So basically I'm just pushing up with the paintbrush to see if I like them to come down just a touch, because in the kiln firing, clay sinks and slumps sometimes, and this is B-mix. The clay I'm using is really just, it's not meant for huge pieces like this, although I've done it all the time and I've never had a problem. I have to cover with plastic as they're drying to make them dry a little slower. But if you lift it up a bit higher than you want it to be, then in the firing it will sink and be where you want it to be again, because you've anticipated that movement. All right, so this one I'm going to push down again. So there's, it's a lot of care. You've just got to be really careful. Don't rush anything. That's easy to say. I mean, if you're rushing to get to a craft fair and you've got one of these on the go, probably shouldn't have made it just before the craft fair. That's when we get craft fairs going again, of course. I've done my last craft fair though. I'm retirement age, so basically I do this for fun now. All right, I've got work to do on these to get them perfect, but if you can see both of them, I have two jars. Both of them I threw the lids, as you saw earlier. are going to have lids, and I have yet to decide what to do on top of the lids. A lot of my stuff has big, huge sculpture things going on, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that to these ones. But anyway, from beginning to finish, all I got to do is trim these guys, which I will do. Up here, obviously not, but down here they will be trimmed, so they'll have a much smaller, narrower base on them. And I'll keep you up to date with the progress of these ones right up to and when they come out of the firing. Alright, this is Vaughan Smith in Nova Scotia. If I learn how to edit on an iPhone, or iPad rather, maybe I can cut these videos down a little bit. Alright, but I'll try and figure that part out. Alright, Vaughan Smith, Nova Scotia, thanks very much for joining me.